I'm Pastor Doug Meacham from Grace Chapel in Westerville, Ohio, and we welcome you back to Life's Beautiful Journey Radio. Each week we will be talking about a different part of life, and this week we will be talking about parks. Now, when we think about parks, we have several ways to go in talking about them. You know, there are local community parks where you might take the kids or your dog to play. Or maybe there are the national parks where you might see some major tourist attractions across the country. And there are amusement parks, which are some of my favorites. You know, one thing I know is that each type of park has its own charm and beauty in life. You know, in recent years, we have seen some wildfires rage through our national parks, including one in the Smoky Mountains, which we'll talk about the Smokies here in a little bit. But, you know, I heard about a photographer from a well-known international magazine who was assigned to cover some fires that were in Yellowstone National Park one time. And when the photographer arrived, he realized that the smoke was so thick it would seriously impede or make it impossible for him to photograph anything at the ground level. So he requested permission to hire a plane and take photos from the air. Well, arriving at the airport, he saw a plane warming up near the gate, so he jumped in with his bag and shouted, "Let's go!" So the pilot turned the plane onto the runway, and within minutes they were in the air. And the photographer said, "Now fly over the park and make 2 or 3 low passes so that I can take some photographs." "Well, why?" the pilot asked. "Well, because I am a photographer, and photographers take photographs," he said. Then the pilot was silent for a moment and finally said, "So you mean you're not the flight instructor?" Sometimes that beauty and grandeur, I guess, of parks can cause us to be overwhelmed. You know, I always loved going to our local park as a kid, and this was one of the first places I think a kid can really start to use their imagination, right? You know, you might recall as a kid calling out that you're a mountain climber as you climb up the jungle gym there in the park, or claim to be an astronaut as you soar into the air on the swings. You know, that's always fun to do, and always fun to see our kids do that now, and grandkids. But, you know, we used to visit some of the national parks as well around the country on vacations as I was growing up, and we'd do that each year. And I was able to see the Old Faithful Geyser there in Yellowstone National Park, and I saw the Grand Canyon in the Grand Canyon National Park, and then, of course, Mount Rushmore there at the Mount Rushmore Memorial Park. And many others, of course, across the country. In fact, one of our favorite national parks to visit, even today quite a bit, nowadays, is the Smoky Mountain National Park, as I mentioned, there in Tennessee. And it also covers other states, but the main portion we visit is usually in Tennessee. And this park includes the Appalachian Trail, where I've hiked 50 miles worth of the path there, of course, as a teenager, as a scout. Back in the day, and it was quite the experience, as we had to set up tents each night, make campfires. We'd have to purify our water that we'd get from the streams, and then we would find secluded places to go to the bathroom. You know, we would be exhausted each night after we were hiking 8 to 10 miles a day, and we would just collapse. I can remember there was a beautiful view there that all the guys were sitting there looking at, and I said, "Oh, that's beautiful," and went back to the tent and fell asleep. Worn out. But, you know, the views that we would get during different portions of the trail were just amazing. And speaking of awesome views, there was another place to visit there in the Smoky Mountain National Park called Clingman's Dome. And from the top of the tower at Clingman's Dome, you can see 7 states all around you. And those include Tennessee, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. And earlier in the podcast, you know, I talked about being overwhelmed while visiting a national park, and that often happens whenever guests see animals roaming freely in the park. You know, cars are lined up for miles with people getting out and trying to get pictures with them somehow. Usually the park rangers discourage people getting out of their cars because you never know what the wild animals might do. They might charge you or come attack you. But they think they know better, I guess. But another fun thing to do, of course, in that park is to visit the Chimneys picnic area. And at that location, there is a section of mountain stream that has giant rocks that you can climb on and jump between. And the challenge is to not fall into the cold water as you are doing so. And we love doing that, you know, and have a lot of photos and memories from that place of us jumping around those rocks. But for amusement parks, we have a couple in Ohio that we visit often. One is called Kings Island, and the other is called Cedar Point. Now, Kings Island's down by Cincinnati, and Cedar Point is up in Sandusky, Ohio, in the northern part. And both have a great amount of roller coasters and other rides that you can try while you visit. But Cedar Point often holds records for the amount of roller coasters that they have on site. I think they keep building them, so they try to stay on top of the game there. But one of our favorite roller coasters was called the Top Thrill Dragster. And that would take you up 420 feet in the air, and it would launch you at 120 miles an hour there to take off. It was amazing. It was like being shot out of a rocket. And I believe they've been doing some refurbishing on that. It's been closed for a couple years, but it should be open up again soon, they say. So we're looking forward to that. But as you know, of course, from past episodes, we are also big Disney fans. And Disney World there in Florida is where we visit most. We've been to the one in California as well, but most of the time we get to Florida. And I know there's been some controversy recently regarding their company, and we get it. You know, we understand that and try to adjust and make the stands that we need to in that regard. But we do have a lot of nostalgia from those parks going back years and years ago. In fact, I was taken to Disney World when I was only 2 years old back in 1972 when it first opened. And since that time, we've probably been to the park over 40 times or more there over the years. And the most nostalgic park, of course, in the four that are there in Florida on the property is the Magic Kingdom. And that's the one with the big Cinderella's castle you probably see on TV a lot. And they also have the classic rides such as the Pirates of the Caribbean, the Haunted Mansion, and of course Walt's own brainchild there, the Carousel of Progress, where you're actually sitting in a theater that rotates around the stage, and it's kind of interesting. But my favorite park would have to be Epcot there in that location, and it's the most spread out to help with crowds, and they do a lot of sharing about new technology, and of course the food in the World Showcase areas is probably the best on the grounds in my opinion. And I love going there and just getting to walk around and get a lot of exercise, of course, in that park. And I've also learned a lot about various effects and such that can be used in our church plays and productions from seeing what they do there at Disney. And have learned a lot, including the Carousel of Progress. We actually made a stage that would rotate during the performance. But Universal Studios is also in that same area. And I do enjoy going there as well, and our band actually got to play at one of their festivals, Rock the Universe, for 2 years in a row back in the early 2000s. And that was quite the experience as well. But, you know, no matter what type of park you like to visit, I think we all enjoy the relaxation, the exercise, and fellowship we can have at those parks. You know, the Bible often talks about moments when various characters would get away from it all to be alone with God. In fact, Luke 4:42, the first part of it even talks about Jesus doing so. It says, at daybreak, Jesus went out to a solitary place. He knew that he needed time away from it all in life, didn't he? You know, many times that's when he was able to draw closest to his Heavenly Father. You know, it makes me think about us as believers and the fact that we also need time to get away from all things, get away from it all, right? To spend time with our Heavenly Father. You know, have you been so wrapped up sometimes maybe in work or other situations in life that you have not been able to take that time to get away and talk with the Lord? You know, that's something we all should strive to do more and more in our lives, because it helps not only with our spiritual walk, but also with our physical and emotional state of mind. So I'd encourage you to find some time to go to a park even this week. Now, it doesn't have to be a trip to Disney World, although that's fun, right? But it could be the park down the road to just get away and spend time with family, friends, and God. For doing that is the best way to travel through life's beautiful journey. Our podcast, again, is sponsored by Grace Chapel Community Church, and more information can be found about the church at gracechapel.us. Again, that's gracechapel.us. And remember that you can send me an email directly to Pastor Doug Meacham at yahoo.com. Again, that's Pastor Doug, Meacham, at yahoo.com. And make sure to check out our new YouTube channel for some exciting adventures and enhanced versions of our podcast. We have those out there, and a lot about travel. In fact, some of the things we talked about today will be out there. And also, if you can follow us on Facebook for some product link mentions and other items related to our episodes, that would be amazing as well. And I ask you, won't you join us again next week for Life's Beautiful Journey? Thanks again for joining us, and God bless.